There are moments in life when what looks like loss is actually creating space, not because the loss was easy, not because what happened did not hurt, and not because everything that fell apart was secretly meant to happen exactly the way it did, but because sometimes your old reality becomes too small for the version of you your soul is trying to call forward. You may have thought you were losing opportunities, losing the job, losing relationships, losing the home, losing the version of life you had worked so hard to build and hold together. But what if some of what disappeared could not follow you into the reality you are becoming capable of holding? What if the setback was not the final verdict? What if it was repositioning? Because the version of you who is being called forward cannot live exactly the way the old version of you lived. You are being stretched into more faith, more discernment, more self-trust, a greater capacity to receive without immediately fearing that everything good is going to disappear. And that kind of expansion does not always feel beautiful while it is happening. Sometimes it feels like uncertainty. Sometimes it feels like standing in the middle of a life you no longer recognize. Sometimes it feels like watching doors close before you can see what is opening. Sometimes it feels like being asked to keep believing while the physical evidence still looks completely opposite to the breakthrough you are hoping for. That is where faith begins to stretch. Not when everything is obvious, not when the answer has already arrived, but when something deeper inside you keeps whispering that your story is still moving, even when your circumstances look still. You may be learning how to trust what you cannot fully see yet, how to keep creating when the audience has not arrived yet, how to keep preparing when the opportunity has not appeared yet, how to believe in a safer life before you are standing inside it, how to imagine abundance after a chapter that taught you to expect loss. And none of that stretching is wasted, because what is coming has to match the person you are becoming. A larger reality requires a larger capacity. More peace may require you to become available for a life that feels lighter. More opportunity requires you to believe you are allowed to be seen. More stability may require you to trust that everything is working out for your best and highest good. More love may require a version of you that no longer mistakes inconsistency for connection. More abundance may be stretching your ability to imagine a life where receiving does not always have to come through struggle. This is why some setbacks change you so deeply. They confront the beliefs that would have followed you into the breakthrough. They expose where you were still shrinking, still doubting, still settling, still trying to force an old reality to work because you were afraid there would be nothing better beyond it. But your soul may already know what your fear does not. There is more, and the version of you being formed right now is not being prepared to return to the life that collapsed. You are being prepared to hold the life that comes after it. And sometimes the hardest part is that you do not recognize the repositioning while it is happening. You only see what stopped, what disappeared, what did not work, what you thought you were finally going to have, only to watch it move out of reach. You may have interpreted the delay as rejection, the closed door as proof that you were going in the wrong direction, the collapse as evidence that you had somehow missed your moment. But what if the breakthrough required you to be moved first? What if your soul was trying to get you out of a reality that could not support where you were going? Because sometimes the new reality cannot meet you in the exact same place where the old one kept breaking you down. Something has to shift. Your environment, your perspective, your standards, your faith. Your willingness to believe that life can still surprise you after disappointment taught you to expect the worst. And this is why repositioning can feel so uncomfortable. You are being asked to move before you understand where everything is leading. You are being asked to release what is familiar before the new thing feels secure. You are being asked to trust that the empty space is not evidence that nothing is coming. Because sometimes the empty space is where the new reality begins forming. It is where you stop filling every opening with what already failed you. It is where you stop running back to what hurt simply because it's familiar and you know how to survive there. It is where you finally become available for something different, and that difference may require more from you than you expected. Not more suffering, more capacity, more faith, more willingness to receive, more courage to believe that your life can become larger than the chapter that tried to convince you otherwise. Because a breakthrough is not only about the external thing finally arriving, it is also about becoming able to recognize it when it does, to trust it, to choose it, to stop sabotaging what is good because chaos feels more familiar, to stop shrinking when life asks you to expand, to stop assuming that every opportunity has a hidden cost simply because so many things in the past did. This is why the stretching of your faith matters. Your faith is being asked to grow beyond what your current circumstances can prove. Your imagination is being asked to move beyond what your past has shown you. Your soul is asking you to prepare for a reality that may not look anything like the one you had to survive. And that may be why certain things have felt so intense lately. Because you are standing at the edge of a version of yourself that cannot be formed through comfort alone. There are parts of you that only become visible when you are asked to believe without guarantees. When you are asked to trust God's plan, even though something you wanted didn't work out the way you hoped. When you are asked to rebuild without knowing exactly how the story will turn. That does not mean the pain was required. It does not mean every loss was divinely assigned. But it does mean that what happened does not have to be wasted. Your soul can still use it. Your life can still build from it. Your future can still expand beyond it. And the very chapter that made you question everything may become the chapter that revealed how much strength, clarity, faith, and vision were actually inside you. You thought you were being pushed backward, but you may have been pulled out of alignment with a reality that had already reached its limit. You thought you were starting over, but you may have been starting from a deeper level of awareness than you ever had before. You thought everything was taking too long. But perhaps something within you was still becoming ready to hold what you had been asking for. Because when the breakthrough arrives, it will not simply match the desires you once had. It will match the person those experiences helped call forward, the person who knows more now, the person who sees more clearly, the person who is less willing to abandon themselves for temporary security. The person who has learned that faith is not always about knowing exactly how things will work out. Sometimes, faith is deciding that the story is still unfolding even when you cannot yet see the evidence. And that is where the shift begins. Not at the moment everything finally changes on the outside, but at the moment something changes inside you enough that you become available for a different reality. You start thinking differently, choosing differently, expecting differently, believing differently. And eventually your outer life begins catching up with the person you have become. That is why what is coming will match you differently. It is not returning to meet the old version of you. It is arriving for the version of you who survived the collapse, stretched their faith, rebuilt their vision, and kept moving even when there was no guarantee of what would happen next. So if this message is helping you believe that your setback may not be the end of the story, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who needs to remember that their life may still be repositioning them for something greater. Because the door that closed may have cleared the path. The loss may have created the space. The pressure may have expanded your capacity. And what looked like your life moving backward may have been the exact moment your soul began moving you toward the breakthrough your old reality could never have held. And this is where everything begins to connect. Because the breakthrough is not arriving for the person you were before everything changed. It is meeting the person you became because you kept going through it. The person whose faith had to stretch beyond what they could physically see. the person who learned how to keep believing after disappointment, the person who had to imagine a future while standing inside circumstances that looked nothing like it, the person who discovered that losing one reality did not mean losing every possibility that could ever exist. That is who the new reality is coming to meet. And this is why what is coming may fit you in ways the old life never did. The opportunities may feel more natural. The relationships may feel more reciprocal. The environment may finally give you room to expand instead of constantly asking you to shrink. The things you once had to chase may begin finding their way toward you with less resistance, not because you suddenly became more worthy, but because you are no longer trying to force yourself into spaces that were never built to hold where your life was going. There is a difference between receiving something you desperately wanted and receiving something that actually matches who you have become. And when that difference becomes visible, you may finally understand why simply getting the old life back would not have been enough. You needed something that could meet your new standards, your new vision, your new faith, your new capacity. You needed experiences that could expand with you instead of requiring you to return to an older version of yourself just to keep them. That is why the breakthrough may look different from what you originally pictured. It may arrive through a door you were not watching, through an opportunity you could not have planned, through a connection you never expected to make, through an idea that suddenly begins gaining momentum, through circumstances rearranging in a way that makes you realize things were moving long before you could see them. And suddenly what looked like a collection of setbacks begins looking more like repositioning. The door that closed moved you. The empty space made room. The delay stretched your faith. The uncertainty forced you to imagine beyond what already existed. And while you were wondering why everything seemed to be taking so long, a version of you was being called forward who could meet the breakthrough differently than you would have before. This is where divine restoration becomes restoration forward. You are not being returned to the exact place where everything fell apart. You are being moved into something that reflects what the journey awakened in you. A reality with more room, more possibility, more alignment, more of the things you once wondered whether you would ever experience again. And perhaps that is why you can feel something changing before you have all of the evidence. Your outer circumstances may still be catching up, but internally you are already beginning to recognize that the story cannot end where it once appeared to end. Something is opening. Something is shifting. Something is beginning to move. And if this message is helping you believe that your life may be positioning you for a breakthrough you cannot fully see yet, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this with someone whose faith is being stretched in this season. Because you did not go through all of that just to become capable of returning to the same reality. The loss created space for more. The stretching prepared you for more. The person you are becoming is available for more. And what is coming is not trying to recreate what you had. It is coming to match where your soul has been trying to take you.